Stop thinking war movies are just entertainment. What if some of them were so accurate? Governments tried to stop people from seeing them. During the Cold War and beyond, a handful of British filmmakers recreated combat, nuclear destruction, and military failure with terrifying realism. The results were so disturbing that American broadcasters cut scenes, blocked broadcasts, or refused distribution entirely. Tonight we're uncovering 15 war films whose realism crossed a line, and one of them was considered so dangerous it vanished for years. The War Game, 1965. In the mid-1960s, British television created a film that felt less like entertainment and more like a warning about the future. The War Game, produced by the BBC, let's imagine what nuclear war would look like inside Britain using a chilling pseudo-documentary style. Instead of dramatic storytelling, the film unfolds like a news broadcast. Officials calmly explain evacuation plans, emergency shelters, and civil defense procedures. Then the bombs fall, cities ignite, hospitals overflow with casualties, and survivors wander through destroyed streets searching for water and missing relatives. Panic spreads faster than radiation. The film's power comes from its cold realism. No heroic victories, no comforting resolution. Authorities feared the public reaction so strongly that the broadcast was withheld for years, and American networks avoided it as well. Because the film didn't feel like fiction. It felt like tomorrow's headlines. Threads, 1984. If the War Game shows the moment nuclear war begins, Threads reveals what happens after civilization collapses. Produced in 1984, the film follows ordinary families in the British city of Sheffield as global tensions suddenly erupt into nuclear conflict. At first, life continues normally. People plan weddings, commute to work, and trust officials who insist the crisis will pass. Then the missiles arrive. In seconds, neighborhoods vanish beneath blinding fire. Buildings crumble and survivors wander through a shattered landscape. But the true horror unfolds later. Months pass, crops fail, governments disappear, and radiation sickness spreads. Children grow up in a world without education, technology, or stability. The film's documentary realism makes everything feel frighteningly possible. Nothing is exaggerated. That bleak authenticity made many American broadcasters hesitate to air it. Because Threads doesn't just show nuclear war, it shows civilization slowly dying. It's Culloden, 1964. Long before gritty historical dramas became popular, director Peter Watkins created a film that completely changed how war could appear on screen. Culloden recreates the 18th century battle between the British government army and the Jacobite forces in Scotland. But instead of presenting the story like a traditional historical epic, the film adopts a shocking approach. It unfolds like a modern television documentary. A reporter interviews soldiers before the battle. Officers explain their strategies directly to the camera. Farmers describe why they joined the rebellion. The conflict feels as if a news crew has traveled back in time. Then the violence begins. Government troops crush the poorly armed Highland army with ruthless efficiency. Wounded fighters are executed where they fall, villages burn, and civilians flee across the countryside. The documentary style removes the distance audiences usually feel from historical events. There is no romantic heroism, only chaos, fear, and suffering. That raw realism made viewers rethink what historical warfare truly looked like. The Hill, 1965. When audiences saw Sean Connery on screen during the 1960s, they expected the confident hero of James Bond. The Hill shattered that expectation almost immediately. The story unfolds inside a brutal British military prison in North Africa during the Second World War. Our soldiers accused of misconduct are sent to the camp where discipline is enforced through relentless punishment. At the center stands a towering mound of sand, known simply as the Hill. Prisoners are forced to march up and down its steep slope for hours under the blazing desert sun, while guards shout orders and men collapse from exhaustion. The punishment isn't meant to correct behavior. It's meant to break people. As the story unfolds, the prison system begins encouraging cruelty. Authority becomes absolute. Officers compete to prove their toughness, and complaints vanish within the chain of command. The most unsettling truth is that these prisoners are not enemies. They are soldiers punishing their own comrades. The film exposes how discipline can slowly turn into humiliation and abuse. Overlord, 1975. At first glance, Overlord appears to be a simple coming-of-age story set during the Second World War. A quiet young man named Tom receives his draft notice and leaves home to join the British Army. He trains with other recruits, learns military discipline, and prepares for the massive invasion that will land Allied forces in Nazi-occupied France. But director Stuart Cooper introduces a striking technique. The fictional story is blended with real archival footage from the war. Authentic images of soldiers, bombers, and battlefield destruction appear seamlessly beside the actors. The effect feels unsettling. Tom no longer seems like a movie character. He feels like a real soldier whose life has been placed directly inside history. Throughout the film, he imagines his own death long before reaching the battlefield. As the story moves toward the D-Day invasion, the scale of events becomes overwhelming. Thousands prepare for the same moment. Yet the film quietly suggests history remembers the battle, not the soldiers. The Battle of Britain, 1969. By the late 1960s, most war movies relied heavily on models, miniatures, and visual tricks to recreate combat. The Battle of Britain attempted something far more ambitious. Instead of special effects, the filmmakers assembled one of the largest collections of real Second World War aircraft ever gathered for a motion picture. Authentic Spitfires, Hurricanes, and German bombers filled the skies to recreate the air war that determined Britain's survival in 1940. The story moves between British and German command centers as both sides attempt to control the skies above England. Pilots scramble from airfields with only minutes to intercept incoming raids. Radar operators track enemy formations moving across the coast. What makes the film remarkable is its commitment to realism. Dogfights unfold with chaotic speed. Aircraft burst into flames mid-air. Pilots eject into smoke-filled skies or disappear with their planes into the English countryside below. For television broadcasts in the United States, several sequences were trimmed because of the intensity of the aerial combat. Yet even with those edits, the film's central message remained powerful. Victory in the Battle of Britain was not guaranteed. The Royal Air Force was dangerously outnumbered. Pilots flew multiple missions each day with almost no rest. One mistake could mean losing the aircraft Britain desperately needed. The battle wasn't just about strategy. It was a race against time, exhaustion, and overwhelming odds. And for months in 1940, the outcome remained uncertain. Oh, what a lovely war, 1969. At first glance, oh, what a lovely war looks strangely cheerful for a film about the First World War. Bright carnival sets fill the screen. Soldiers sing cheerful music hall songs. Officers march across colorful stage-like battlefields, while giant maps track the progress of armies across Europe. But the cheerful presentation hides something deeply unsettling. Director Richard Attenborough uses satire and music to expose the staggering scale of destruction during the First World War. Throughout the film, lively songs are paired with projected statistics showing the growing number of casualties. The numbers climb relentlessly. Thousands become hundreds of thousands. Hundreds of thousands become millions. The cheerful music begins to sound painfully ironic as the audience realizes the soldiers performing these songs are marching toward slaughter. Generals discuss strategy with confident optimism, while soldiers die in waves across muddy battlefields. Entire offensives collapse within hours, yet new attacks are ordered anyway. American distributors found the film's tone uncomfortable. Instead of presenting the war as heroic sacrifice, the story reveals how political leaders and military commanders treated strategy almost like a tragic game. The final sequences abandon satire entirely. The battlefield transforms into a quiet field covered with endless white crosses stretching across the landscape. No speeches explain what happened. No victory music plays. The image alone delivers the film's devastating conclusion. The First World War didn't just destroy armies. It erased an entire generation. A Bridge Too Far, 1977. During the Second World War, Allied commanders designed a plan they believed could end the war quickly. It was called Operation Market Garden. The strategy seemed bold and brilliant. Thousands of airborne troops would parachute behind German lines in the Netherlands, capturing a series of bridges that would open a direct road into Germany. If everything worked perfectly, the war in Europe might end months earlier. A Bridge Too Far recreates that operation with extraordinary detail. The film moves across multiple battlefields, following British, American, and Polish forces as they attempt to secure the bridges one by one. At first, the operation appears successful. Paratroopers land across the countryside, key bridges fall into Allied hands, convoys begin advancing through captured territory. Then the problems begin. German armored divisions appear where intelligence reports insisted none existed. Radio communications fail between isolated units. Reinforcements arrive too slowly. Entire groups of paratroopers become trapped deep behind enemy lines. Street battles erupt in Dutch cities as soldiers attempt to defend positions that were never meant to hold for long. What shocked many viewers was how clearly the film revealed the dangerous optimism behind the original plan. Warnings were ignored, doubts were dismissed. As confidence replaced caution. American television broadcasts later trimmed some of the more intense combat scenes, but the story's conclusion could not be softened. Market Garden was not the decisive victory commanders promised. It became one of the most ambitious military operations of the war, and one of its most painful failures. The final bridge remained out of reach, a bridge too far. The Cruel Sea, 1953. The Atlantic Ocean during the Second World War was not a battlefield most people could see. There were no trenches, no visible front lines, only cold water stretching across thousands of miles. The Cruel Sea follows the crew of a British escort ship tasked with protecting merchant convoys carrying vital supplies across the Atlantic. German submarines lurk beneath the waves, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. At first, the sailors are inexperienced. Many have never faced combat before. Their small warship escorts slow cargo vessels through dark waters while listening constantly for signs of enemy submarines. Then, the attacks begin. Torpedoes strike without warning. Merchant ships erupt in explosions that light the night sky. Survivors spill into freezing water while the convoy struggles to maintain formation. The escort ships face a terrible dilemma. Stopping to rescue survivors risks exposing the entire convoy to submarine attack. Continuing the mission means leaving men behind. One haunting moment captures the brutal logic of naval warfare. A British warship accidentally sails through a group of drowning sailors while pursuing a submarine contact beneath the water. The crew realizes too late what has happened. No music softens the moment, only silence. American distributors found the film's moral realism unsettling. Instead of portraying naval warfare as heroic adventure, the story reveals the unbearable decisions sailors faced during the Battle of the Atlantic. Sometimes victory required choices that haunted survivors for the rest of their lives. The sea offered no mercy, only cold water, and the knowledge that help might never arrive. Attack, 1956. Many war films celebrate strong leaders guiding their soldiers through danger. Attack explores what happens when leadership fails. Set during the Second World War, the story follows a group of American infantry soldiers commanded by Captain Cooney, an officer whose cowardice and indecision place his men in constant danger. Beneath him serves Lieutenant Joe Costa, a battle-hardened platoon leader who quickly realizes that something is terribly wrong. Orders arrive too late, reinforcements fail to appear, missions collapse because the man responsible for command cannot handle pressure. The soldiers begin to understand the truth before their superiors do. Their greatest threat may not be the enemy across the battlefield. It may be their own commanding officer. As the fighting intensifies, Costa watches men die during operations that could have succeeded with proper leadership. Each loss fuels his anger and determination to expose the truth. But confronting the chain of command during wartime carries enormous risk. Military systems rely on obedience. Questioning authority can be treated as betrayal. The film builds toward a tense psychological conflict between duty and justice. Costa believes his commander's cowardice has already killed multiple soldiers, yet proving it could destroy his own career. American audiences in the 1950s were accustomed to wartime stories where officers represented honor, courage, and discipline. Attack shattered that expectation. The film suggested a disturbing possibility. That authority does not guarantee competence, and that sometimes the greatest danger on the battlefield is not the enemy, but the decisions made by the people in charge. The Dam Busters, 1955. During the Second World War, British engineers developed one of the most unusual weapons ever conceived for aerial warfare, a bomb designed to bounce across water. At first, the idea sounded absurd. Traditional bombs sank before reaching heavily protected targets like dams. German defenses surrounding major reservoirs made conventional attacks nearly impossible. Engineer Barnes Wallis proposed something radical. A specially designed bomb would spin backward when released from an aircraft. Instead of sinking, it would skip across the water like a stone, pass over torpedo nets, strike the dam wall, and explode beneath the surface where the structure was weakest. The Dam Busters tells the story of the secret mission created to deliver that weapon. Pilots from a specially trained squadron practice flying their bombers at extremely low altitude, sometimes just 60 feet above water. They rehearsed the approach again and again because the weapon required near-perfect precision. Release the bomb too early, and it would miss the target. Release it too late, and the aircraft might collide with the dam itself. When the night of the mission finally arrives, the tension becomes overwhelming. Bombers fly through darkness across occupied Europe while anti-aircraft guns search the sky. Aircraft skim across reservoirs surrounded by enemy defenses. Searchlights cut through the night as gunners open fire. One by one, planes attempt the impossible approach. Some are destroyed before reaching their target. Others disappear into the darkness without explanation. The film captures the strange mixture of scientific ingenuity and human bravery that defined the mission. Success depended not only on the weapon itself, but on the pilots willing to fly directly into the most heavily defended targets in Germany. For American television broadcasts years later, as some combat sequences were trimmed because of their intensity, but the mission's reality remained unmistakable. Victory required flying straight into danger, and trusting that the science behind a bouncing bomb would actually work. The Bridge on the River Kwai, 1957. Few war films question the meaning of honor as deeply as The Bridge on the River Kwai. Set in a Japanese prisoner of war camp during the Second World War, the story begins with captured British soldiers forced to build a railway bridge for their captors. The project is part of Japan's attempt to create a supply route through the jungles of Southeast Asia. At first, the situation appears straightforward. Prisoners should resist the enemy, sabotage the construction, delay the project whenever possible. But the senior British officer in the camp, Colonel Nicholson, sees the situation differently. Nicholson believes that maintaining discipline and professionalism is essential to preserving the dignity of his soldiers. If the men must build the bridge, he insists they should build it properly, as proof that British engineering and organization remain superior even in captivity. Slowly, the prisoners transform the chaotic construction site into a perfectly organized operation. The bridge begins to take shape. What makes the story disturbing is the growing realization that Nicholson's pride may be helping the enemy. The bridge becomes a masterpiece of engineering, completed faster and stronger than the Japanese officers ever expected. Meanwhile, Allied commandos prepare a dangerous mission. Their objective is simple: destroy the bridge before it can be used by enemy supply trains. The film carefully builds toward a moment where two different ideas of duty collide. Nicholson believes he is protecting the honor of his men by proving their discipline under impossible conditions. The commandos believe the structure must be destroyed, no matter what sacrifices are required. When the final confrontation arrives, the audience is forced to confront a deeply uncomfortable question. At what point does dedication to duty become something else entirely? Because by the time Nicholson realizes the truth, the bridge is already standing. Went the day well? 1942. During the early years of the Second World War, Britain lived with a terrifying possibility: a full-scale German invasion of the island. Went the day well? Imagines what that invasion might look like, not through the eyes of soldiers on a battlefield, but through the lives of ordinary civilians living in a quiet English village. The story begins peacefully. A group of soldiers arrives in the village claiming to be part of a friendly British unit stationed temporarily in the area. The villagers welcome them warmly. Homes open their doors. Supplies are offered. Life continues normally. Then the truth emerges. The soldiers are not British at all. They are German commandos disguised in British uniforms, secretly preparing the area for a larger invasion force. Once their cover is revealed, the situation changes instantly. Communication lines are cut. Roads are blocked. The village becomes an isolated battlefield where civilians must decide whether to resist or surrender. What follows is a desperate struggle for survival. Farmers turn hunting rifles against trained soldiers. Shopkeepers hide weapons inside their stores. Even elderly residents become part of the resistance effort. The film shocked audiences with its brutal honesty. Characters die suddenly and without ceremony. Villagers who seemed harmless become capable of extraordinary courage or terrifying betrayal. For American viewers accustomed to clearer heroic narratives, the idea of civilians fighting such chaotic battles felt deeply unsettling. Yet the film carried a powerful wartime message. If invasion came, the defense of Britain would not rely solely on professional soldiers. Ordinary people would have to fight for their homes, their families, and their country. And victory might demand sacrifices they had never imagined making. The Longest Day, 1962. And recreating the largest amphibious invasion in human history presents an almost impossible challenge for filmmakers. How do you show D-Day without reducing it to a single heroic moment? The Longest Day attempts to answer that question by telling the story from multiple perspectives. American, British, French, and German characters all appear throughout the film, each experiencing the invasion differently. The story begins before the landings themselves. Allied commanders finalize invasion plans. German officers debate whether the attack will strike Normandy or another part of the coast. Weather forecasts become critical as storm clouds threaten the operation. Then, the invasion begins. Paratroopers drop behind enemy lines in the darkness, many landing miles away from their intended targets. Though small groups of soldiers wander through unfamiliar countryside, searching for their units. Meanwhile, thousands of troops approach the beaches aboard landing craft, moving slowly toward heavily defended shorelines. The moment the ramps open, chaos erupts. Machine gun fire tears across the sand. Explosions rip through the surf. Soldiers struggle through water while carrying heavy equipment and weapons. Some never reach the shore. Others push forward despite overwhelming resistance. What makes the film remarkable is its refusal to simplify the event into a single narrative. The invasion unfolds as a massive, fragile operation, where thousands of individual stories intersect. Small decisions made by soldiers, officers, and even civilians shape the outcome in unexpected ways. Later, television broadcasts in the United States edited several combat sequences to meet network standards for violence, but the scale of the operation could never be reduced. D-Day was not a single heroic moment. It was a gamble involving thousands of soldiers who had no guarantee they would survive the first hour of the invasion, and for many of them, that hour was the last one they ever experienced. Come and See, 1985. Some war films attempt to explain history. Come and See forces the audience to endure it. The story follows a young Belarusian boy named Floria during the Nazi occupation of Eastern Europe. At the beginning of the film, he believes joining the resistance will lead to adventure and heroism. Like many young people living in wartime, he imagines battle as something dramatic and meaningful. And reality arrives quickly. Floria discovers abandoned rifles buried in the sand and proudly joins a partisan unit hiding in the forest. At first, the experience feels exciting. The fighters treat him like a younger brother. He dreams of helping defeat the enemy. Then the war begins, revealing its true nature. Villages are burned without warning. Civilians are rounded up and executed. Entire communities vanish in hours as occupying forces carry out brutal reprisals against anyone suspected of supporting resistance fighters. Director Elim Klimov filmed the story with relentless realism. The camera often remains close to Floria's face, allowing the audience to watch his transformation as each new horror unfolds. His expressions slowly change. Excitement becomes confusion, confusion becomes terror. By the end of the film, the young boy who once dreamed of heroism looks decades older, his face permanently marked by what he has witnessed. The film's most disturbing power lies in its refusal to soften the violence. There are no triumphant speeches or heroic victories to comfort the viewer. War appears exactly as the civilians experienced it, unpredictable, cruel, and devastating. For years, distributors in several countries hesitated to release the film widely because of its psychological intensity. The imagery felt too raw, too emotionally overwhelming for mainstream audiences expecting traditional war dramas. Yet, that raw honesty is exactly why Come and See is often considered one of the most powerful anti-war films ever made. Because by the time the final scene fades, the audience understands something impossible to ignore. War does not create heroes. It destroys childhood, memory, and innocence. And the scars it leaves behind can last far longer than the battles themselves. War films often promise heroism. These didn't. They showed the chaos, mistakes, and human cost so honestly that some broadcasters hesitated to let audiences see them. From nuclear nightmares to battlefield disasters, these movies blurred the line between cinema and history. And once you've seen war portrayed this truthfully, the usual Hollywood version suddenly feels very far away.